Well, as you know, there are two meetings. The first one is the Eurogroup meeting. Your own Blum will chair that. I'll be taking over then to chair the ECOFIN. That will begin with a working lunch and continue into the afternoon, and again tomorrow until sometime after midday. So I won't have an active role in the first meeting. But of course, I'll be there with my Irish hat on representing Ireland.
Minister, what about the situation in Cyprus? Is the country in bottomless pit?
Well, the situation in Cyprus is pretty well resolved. I think the big surprise is that it stabilised so quickly after the new arrangements were made, and they're going about their business, and it wouldn't be seen as a crisis issue at today's meeting. It will be mentioned in the normal way, but it will not be the dominant issue.
Don't you see the risk that the program for Cyprus needs to be readjusted?
In what sense?
Don't you see the risk that the program for Cyprus needs to be readjusted to Cyprus to release more money?
No, I think the arrangements are made for Cyprus are generally appropriate to the Cyprus situation. Cyprus obviously was a difficult issue, but the actual quantum of money that was required was significantly smaller than that which was required for other bailout countries. After all, the totality, including the Cyprus contribution, is something over 17 billion, which is serious money in anybody's domestic budget, but in terms of the budgets of nation states, it's not comparable at all to what was required for Greece, Portugal or Ireland.
What do you hope to achieve from your discussion on tax havens?
We hope to commence the conversation, and depending on the views expressed by colleagues around the table, to ask the Commission to do some more focused work and to report back to a meeting very shortly.
And the banking secrecy, Minister, what do you think about the banking secrecy? There's still one country left that kicks it up.
Well, again, it's not a primary agenda item, but there has been movement. I saw the Austrian Chancellor on television the other evening, and there seems to be movement there. There's movement in Luxembourg as well. So there quite clearly is movement now on the sharing of information on the banking side. And we'll see how the steps towards sharing that information can be further formalised. But again, while it's a very interesting item and will be discussed, it's not a prime agenda item for either meeting.
Minister, with respect to the sharing discussions, do you foresee any objections?
Well, it's been a kind of a rolling negotiation since January, and everybody knows what the intent is. The Commission paper, which has been available for some time now, has settled on a 7-year extension of the maturities, and I've had a series of conversations yesterday and the day before. Our Portuguese colleague came early to Dublin, so Vitor Gaspar and myself had a long exchange of views. The night before last, I spoke to Olli Rehn yesterday. I spoke to Vittorio Greeley of Italy and some other colleagues last night. So there doesn't seem to be significant pushback, so we're hoping that it will go through. I think the best way of putting it is that I don't foresee any objection in principle, but obviously individual countries will have to process any arrangement that arises through their national parliaments. And while that will be a matter for individual countries, and sometimes it's difficult to foresee whether there might be difficulties in the parliaments or not.
Are you getting frustrated by the lack of progress on direct recapitalisation for banks?
No, because there isn't a lack of progress. It's something that it's the back end of the portfolio of files on banking union. I think the big breakthrough today will be that we have now got political agreement on the single supervisory mechanism, and we'll move immediately then to use the resources of the Irish presidency to further develop the paper on bank resolution. And in parallel with that, there have been discussions at the last 2 Eurogroup meetings, and there will be another one today, political discussions to provide guidance to a small committee that's drafting the possible rules for direct recapitalisation of banks. I think I said before that rather than allowing a drafting group to come back with a draft paper on guidelines, there is political guidance being given in parallel with the drafting, and that will continue today. It will be the third of a series of 3 meetings where that will be discussed. So the drafting committee will be in a position to bring the guidelines forward. But as I've said on a number of occasions, direct recapitalisation is the last piece of a series of policies that need to be decided before there is banking union. And in terms of a timeline, we're looking at next year. We're not looking at this year for direct recapitalisation. But then we never were. It's not a question of a delay. It's a question of things being put in place sequentially.
Minister, to what extent will Slovenia further your discussions today, and will Cyprus form a template for dealing with Slovenia's situation?
Slovenia is not on the agenda today, and there won't be any discussion on Slovenia in any formal session today. And so the second part of the question then doesn't arise.
Minister, how serious are the German concerns on the ECB bank supervisor legislation? I think Minister Schäuble has said this issue is to do with treaty change.
Yeah, there's an intention that Germany may have a declaration which they will promulgate in parallel with the agreement on the single supervisory mechanism. But any country at any stage can have a declaration to cater for a particular interest they would have themselves or a particular concern they would have. But it wouldn't be part of the policy document which has now been politically agreed at Coreper, and I am confident will be endorsed by ministers today and tomorrow.
I was going to take you back to Cyprus and ask whether you think there's a credible growth plan in place to fit this bailout deal.
Well, the bailout deal is very recent for Cyprus, and growth takes time. So the first step in all bailouts is to stabilise the situation. And as I understand it, the situation in Cyprus has been stabilised. People are going about their daily work in the normal way. Banks are trading again, and it's stabilised.
That's great. Thank you very much, guys.
All right. Sorry. Okay.
Can I just ask you, how optimistic are you that an extension to the maturity might be agreed today?
Over the last 48 hours were quite successful, and there's certainly agreement in principle now. Whether there is any particular difficulty that arises from colleagues or not, we won't know until it's openly discussed at meetings. I'm reasonably optimistic.
Just on the issue of bank recapitalisation, would you be hoping you can advance your position there and maybe get some return for the money that's been put in on the bank?
It's too soon to get anything of that nature agreed. What's being discussed is the guidelines under which any possible bank recapitalisation will operate. So there will be another discussion to further the drafting of those guidelines. But there is no possibility of bank recapitalisation until all the other policy arrangements for banking union are put in place, and it will be the coping stone. It will be the last piece.
Thank you.